Fantastic. For those who are currently here, just an FYI, unfortunately, Georgia has had to step out for at least 10 to 15 minutes, as unfortunately, her building had a bit of a fire alarm. And so I have just gone ahead and kind of just hijacked the meeting until she kind of comes back. But I'll wait for a few more people to come in. And then once we have like, think about 10 people have registered, once we have the full house, we will get stuck in. And I've got a bit of a presentation to go through, and I will be asking you guys some questions, and you can filter those through into the chat. And during the presentation, I will just consistently reference those questions. And yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, this is for you guys. So anything you guys want to know, even if it's outside of what I'm currently talking about in my presentation, totally fine. As long as it's to do with email marketing, I can help as much as I possibly can. But it should be a good one. I'll just wait for a few more people to come on in, and we will get stuck in. I'd love to be able to play some background music. Too easy. We'll wait for 1 more minute and then we'll get started. Fantastic. Georgia, you're back. Welcome.
I'm back.
I've given like a bit of a prelim to everybody here, given them a quick rundown. But honestly, I think I've nailed it. I think I'll sort this out.
Evan, you're going to be our new host. Morena Tato, Morena everyone. Thank you for coming and joining us. I don't know, Gavin, what you said, but everyone who was here last week on Tuesday knows that we had major tech issues and everything has been so out of our control lately. I have no idea what's going on. Did you mention that there was a fire alarm?
I did.
A fire alarm just went off and everyone said, Georgia, you need to evacuate the building. And I said, this building better be on fire. Building better be on fire. I have an event.
You were quick. You were quick though.
Yeah, because I was out there yelling at everyone and I said, if this place is not on fire, you better let me back in. This is what Greeks do. Greeks get angry and get shit done. Oh, sorry. Things get done.
This is that digital boost energy, huh?
Digital boost. Well, welcome. I'm sure you welcomed everyone. I'm going to welcome everyone. Welcome me, Georgia Hatch, your host, to our Digital Boost Q&A event with Gavin Hewitson. Thank you, Gavin, for taking time out to talk to us about retail email marketing. Gavin, you talked, I'm just going to assume that you talked about how you are the founder of Inbox.
I haven't gone too into depth about that, but yes, I am the founder of Inbox. We are an email, and we also do a bit of SMS marketing for our clients as well. And we typically, like you said, specialize in the retail space. So anybody who sells a physical product online. But for those who are here who are in the B2B area, there's definitely going to be some nuggets in this presentation for you as well, as I will be going over some fundamentals on just like what makes a good campaign strategy, what makes good email copy, and all that good stuff.
That's fantastic. And also, look, you're here with us. Pop your questions into the Q&A function. I'm going to be looking at those and ask Gavin your questions. Let's pick his brain because he really does have expertise in this, and we can really, no questions too silly. So there's no simple questions, even like, what is an email marketing campaign? What does that mean? What is email marketing? Even as simple as that, like just ask your questions, get in there. I'd love to know. I'm really new to all of this digital stuff. There's a filter on this. No one really knows how old I am. I'm old. I just learned how to use a computer. So
hey, I'm 18. So, I'm not, by the way, for anybody in the chat, but yes.
Yeah. So let's get into it. Welcome, Gavin. Welcome. And let's get into what we've got.
Fantastic.
With retail email marketing.
I will go ahead and share my screen.
Great.
And going to be using trusty Canva here. Let me know if you guys can see that there.
I can see it. Great.
Fantastic. So email marketing Q&A. By the end of today, we're going to be going over, throughout this whole presentation, I'm hoping that by the end of this day, you guys will know what email marketing platform you should be using for email marketing, the key elements of an email marketing strategy, best practices in terms of consent. So how to get people's consent to actually opt in to receive emails from you. The last thing you want to be doing is breaking the law. And then finally, how to gain new subscribers, which kind of ties into that consent conversation there, right? Because obviously we want to be making sure that we're actually communicating with people, especially if we want to have an email marketing strategy. If there's no one to send emails to, all of this is for naught. So that's what we're going to be going through today. Just a few questions, and guys, please pop these into the chat. I'd love to just get a bit of a lay of the land about you guys. So who here runs some sort of e-commerce element for their business? Are they an e-commerce store? How familiar are you guys with email marketing on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being really familiar, 1 being I've never sent a campaign before? And number 3 is, for those who are not in the e-commerce space, what industry are you guys in? And what are you hoping to, and what, once again, familiarity do you guys have with the email side of things? So 3 questions: are you in e-commerce? Yes or no. Number 2 is, on a scale of 1 to 10, how familiar are you with email marketing? And 3, final one, is what industry are you in if it is not e-commerce? So while you guys are typing those things out, I will tell you a little bit about myself. Look at that. Oh, look at that little cutie. Basically, I started doing email marketing when I was a touring stand-up comedian. So I was doing stand-up comedy across New Zealand. So I've got an American accent, but lived here for about 18 years now. And while I was doing stand-up comedy, believe it or not, I needed a way to make money because comedy did not pay the bills. And so I started contracting with a few agencies, with this guy's agency right here. He was the guy who ran a marketing agency, and he was also the guy I was touring with, funnily enough. And so I just did a bit of freelance work for him, and then gradually just did more and more and more. And after about 3 years, I kind of came at a crossroads with my comedy journey and the future type of lifestyle that I wanted to live. And I realized that perhaps comedy isn't really going to get me to where I want to be in 5-10 years with that, whether that be like a family or whether that just be a healthy mental state. And I went and pivoted to an agency, and I set up my own agency, which is where I am now. So I moved from the contracting role to eventually just setting up my own agency, working directly with my own clients, which is Inbox. And unfortunately, that has come through a little bit pixelated there, but that is my agency. So we specialize in email and SMS marketing. So when I first heard about email marketing, and I'm sure a lot of you guys out there probably think the exact same thing, you think spam. You think people trying to sell you insurance, you think Nigerian print schemes, all those things out there, right? That's kind of the common notion. And the reality is it's a lot more than that. But in its most basic sense, and once again, if you guys are very familiar with email marketing, I can go as in-depth as we want and as shallow as we want as well. So if you do have more questions on any of these aspects, and I will be diving in more in the presentation, chuck them in the chat and I will fire away.
Yeah, we do have a couple of people who've responded to your question in the beginning. So it's pretty much new to email commerce. We've got people who are like, a 5 out of 10 with email commerce. We've got train into the service industry is one of the industry.
Cool.
Things.
Okay.
Can you see the Q&A as well?
I think I can.
Now that you are also host.
Yes. Now that I am also a host. Yes. Okay. So yes, in the service industry, 2.5 out of 10, easy. Yep. New to email, e-commerce, too easy. Okay. Fantastic. Awesome. Great. Cool. So this will be perfect then. So what email marketing actually is it comprises of a few different components that don't traditionally speak to email, right? An email marketing strategy involves campaigns, which are one-off emails, such as like a newsletter or a company announcement or a sale email. A lot of you guys are going to be seeing a lot of Black Friday sale emails coming up. If not, I think some of you might have actually already seen some stuff or chatter in your inboxes from companies that are sending those emails. For some of my clients, we're already starting to get ready for Black Friday, which is obviously in the tail end of November, but we're sending out campaigns, one-off emails to our audience. It also involves sign-up forms or pop-ups. You know, when you go on a website and a pop-up shines up and it says, hey, 10% off. We find them annoying, I agree, but they are actually one of the core elements to growing the size of an e-commerce business's list or database. So sign-up forms is another aspect of that. And then finally, automations. Now, depending on the software that you guys are using, whether it be something like MailChimp, whether it be something like Klaviyo, they give these names, automations, different names rather. They call them flows in Klaviyo. They call them journeys in MailChimp. They call them drip sequences in platforms such as OmniSend, I believe. There's a bunch of different names, but in its most basic sense, it is an automation that is triggered off of a certain action on the website. And those automations send emails based on what the person's doing. I'm sure a lot of you guys are familiar. You add an item to your cart on a store, 30 minutes, 45 minutes later, you get an email saying, hey, we noticed you haven't finished your order. Here's the item that you looked at. Let's finish the process and finish the purchase. That's called an abandoned cart sequence. And that's an automation, right? Because that's triggered off of somebody adding it to your cart. So those are the core elements of what an email marketing strategy actually is. Does that all make sense over there? Fantastic. Now, I see, Joe, you mentioned you're in the construction industry. So from a B2B perspective, right, we're probably not going to be playing a whole lot in the sign-up form realm. When someone jumps onto your website and there's like a pop-up, you might be getting emails in a different way. And I'll show you how to do that later on. But when we think automations, a lot of the times our heads go to that abandoned cart flow that I just said, or the post-purchase thank you flow or automation, where you buy a product and then you get a series of emails thanking them for an order. In the B2B space, business to business, automations can be a little bit different. We can send automations based on deal stages, right? Let's say somebody has accepted a quote, but they haven't paid. We can trigger automations for that, saying, hey, we noticed you haven't paid, and make that whole process automatic. We can also do the same after a job. For example, if you're in the construction industry, after a job has been completed, we can say, hey, how did we do? Let us know what your thoughts are. Could you give us a Google review or something like that? There's automations we can create from an email perspective and also an SMS perspective, but I'm not going to go into SMS today, for pretty much every aspect of the user journey or customer behavior. And really big businesses will have hundreds of these, because they can get really granular into the data. So those are the core elements of an email marketing strategy. Any questions on that before I move in?
I don't see anything at the moment. Yeah.
Fantastic. Cool. Too easy. So why you should be investing into your email marketing. First of all, $42 for every $1 you get, for every $1 you put in, is the highest return on investment marketing strategy out there. It's all first-party data. We've all been hearing about Facebook and Google, or Meta, or rather Apple and Google, cracking down on who they're sharing data with. Email, you own all that data. It's your data. Anything people do on your website, you get to keep that data, and no one can take it away from you. No one can conceal it from you. It's one of the most direct forms of communication out there, apart from giving someone a letter in the mail or calling them or meeting them in person. Apart from those three, email is far more direct than just simply posting on Instagram, posting a story. It's goes straight into the inbox, and you're gonna see it based on the time that it comes in, not based on like the popularity of the email, right? Like with social media, you're only going to see a post if it's very popular, more often than not. With email, it's a bit different.
So in that way, Gavin, it feels like an email is a more intimate form of contacting someone. So
100%.
So email marketing, even though we're automating it and it's becoming, I guess, something that we're not hands-on doing because we're saving our own time, we
Sure.
still have to find a way of making it sound personal to the person, because you're having a one-on-one conversation with them. That's what you're saying. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a great point. So striking that balance between automating aspects of the workflow, but also keeping that personal human element is really important. There are, just speaking to that, actually, there are two types of emails you can typically send. Now, When I send an email to my friends, my family, colleagues, work, you'll notice that it doesn't look like a typical newsletter, right? It's written out. It's written out and there's words and there's no GIFs or GIFs, however you say it. Those are called plain text emails. And those are personalized because they look personalized and because they're directed to an individual. A lot of the times with email marketing, we build templates, which are good because we can include images and stuff like that, but they don't feel very personalized. And so you'll find a lot of big businesses now are actually creating automations and newsletters with plain text emails, no graphics, nothing like that, and just making it seem like it's very direct and one-on-one. And you notice a lot of for anyone who's been sold some marketing course or had a cold call, and then you've said, yes, I'll jump on a meeting, and you go into their email funnel, you'll notice a lot of those emails are actually plain text. There's no graphics in there. Because they're written to seem like they're coming from a human being. And you actually have to, as an email marketing strategist myself, you have to weigh up, is it better for me to have visual elements in this email, or is it better for me to have a more personalized feel from a plain text perspective? And it's like weighing up those two things. And the way that I weigh that up is I just look at the numbers after testing, right? But early stages, it might be more of a gut feel. In the B2B space, business to business space, I advocate for actually writing plain text emails, not having any HTML. HTML is what we call emails with images, just because in B2B, you're not really trying to sell directly. You're actually trying to get somebody on the phone, set up a meeting. No one's going to buy a $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 service by just clicking add to cart. And it just doesn't happen like that. It always takes some sort of consultation phase. And finally, I'm sure many of you guys, if you've experimented with meta ads or Google, they're becoming more and more expensive. Like as time goes on, things are ramping up in price. Email has stayed relatively the same in price. You only pay for what you use. And once again, $42 for every dollar that you put in. That's from an e-commerce perspective. Please keep that in mind, though, not from a B2B perspective. B2B obviously is a bit harder from an attribution perspective. So that's why you should be investing in email. Now, what email platform you should be using? I'm going to say right now, I hate MailChimp, and I am sure a bunch of you guys might be using it. And to give you guys credit, MailChimp was good back in the day when it first started. It was one of the early movers and it was cheap. They've upped their prices recently, and they really do not stack up to a lot of the more modern ESPs or email service providers that are out there. Reason being, their segmentation isn't quite there. Actually, I'll go into that. But first off, I can speak directly to, if you're in the e-commerce space, absolutely use Klaviyo. Klaviyo is the go-to. It integrates perfectly with a lot of the platforms out there, such as WooCommerce, Shopify, anything like that. It integrates beautifully. And I'll speak to this in the next slide here. The template designer rather, in the platform is far more flexible. You can get a lot more creative with the way that your emails look, as opposed to something such as MailChimp within Klaviyo. And once again, in most email providers, they're actually going to outperform MailChimp. Segmentation is more robust in Klaviyo compared to MailChimp. Now, for those who don't know, segmentation is essentially taking your list, your entire database, and chopping it up according to the properties of your audience. And this is where email marketing actually kind of steps up a little bit. For those who are just sending out an email blast to your entire newsletter, don't do that. You want to segment your audience according to how they're interacting with your business. At the end of the day, you don't want to be sending emails to people who are not even opening your emails in the first place. So segment your audience the easiest place to start is to segment your audience according to how engaged they are with your emails. And you can do that by just having a property or a rule in your segmentation, or custom audiences, I believe is what it's called in MailChimp, if you do stick with that. Just say, if somebody has opened an email in the last 90 days, and that is the list that you want to send to for a start, right? And then as you go on, as you get bigger with your business, you can start segmenting according to when they were last active on your site, what items they've purchased, all that good stuff, and you can get a little bit more granular.
And
But
just just
Sure.
quickly, so segmenting is just categorizing your people. It's just putting them into groups, right? And so
100%.
that's, yeah. Okay.
And then it's creating like strategies for those segments, right? I'll give you an example, right? So we're prepping for a Black Friday campaign for one of our clients, and these guys have a list of about 22,000. So it's quite a few people, right? And we've categorized their audience according to how many times a particular user has placed an order. So if someone's placed an order 6 times in the last year, we're going to classify them as a VIP. If they place an order 3 times in the last year, we're going to classify them as a loyal customer. If someone's never placed an order, we're going to classify them as a non-customer. And for each of these segments, we're going to have a Black Friday campaign specific to those segments, giving different offers and recommendations to each one of those segments, because we shouldn't be treating when it comes to an email marketing strategy, we shouldn't be treating everybody equally. I know that sounds bad when it came out of my mouth, but I think in reality, you have to be respectful of the fact that, some people are more loyal to your brand and they should be rewarded for that, right? Some people don't like, here's a classic example. Let's say you sell foods and someone has told you that they have a peanut allergy. There's no way you're going to sell peanut butter to that person with a peanut allergy. Segments them out. And this is where segmentation gets really good. And this is where you can do personalization to a degree at scale, right? Because you can start chopping up your audience. And personalization, it can be as simple as, hi there, John, first name tag, right? Or it can be as robust as, hi there, John, we noticed last week you saw XYZ. Here's some cross-sell recommendations for other products. You can get as deep as you really want.
Wow. And you're saying Klaviyo does that?
Klaviyo allows you to segment by pretty much any metric that you want, and unfortunately MailChimp, there is segmentation there, doesn't let you get as robust and as deep with it as well. And on top of that, you can test a lot more. Now, I'm going to get into the testing conversation a little bit later, but you can test a lot more variables in somewhere like Klaviyo as opposed to something like MailChimp. You can split test look and feel of emails, designs, and run a lot of split tests. You can split test sign-up forms and all that good stuff. And you can do that in MailChimp, but you can do a lot more of it in Klaviyo.
And I'm just going to mention that at Digital Boost, we are Switzerland. We don't pick and choose, but it's nice to learn of how different these different platforms are and how
100%.
and what a difference they can make for your business. So thank you, Gavin.
Absolutely. And I want to reiterate, Klaviyo is definitely the go-to for e-commerce businesses.
Okay.
The reason MailChimp has really stood out for a lot of B2B businesses is because it integrates really well with a bunch of other platforms out there. Klaviyo integrates really well with e-commerce platforms. B2B is a bit different. It can be, you have to use, for those who are aware, there's this software called Zapier that allows you to take one element, pass it into another one that doesn't traditionally integrate. And finally, the user interface is a lot easier to navigate. I do this for a living and I get confused by how things are broken down in MailChimp. Things don't fully make sense to me when I see things. I get confused in there. And that's just a little pet peeve. That's why I put it at the bottom. But yeah, so that's why I recommend switching off of MailChimp. And
so quickly before we how easy is it to switch off of MailChimp and into a different platform? Does it depend on the platform or? Yeah.
So, I mean, switching is easy. It depends on how many of those automations I mentioned you guys have set up in your MailChimp platforms. That's a really good question, Georgia. It is really as easy as just exporting your list, so downloading your list and then building it into Klaviyo, for example. I think if I were to allocate time, for me, it takes me under 3 minutes. But for someone else, it might take a bit longer to learn the systems, the ins and outs, but it's very intuitive. If you do have a bunch of automations or journeys set up in the background, you will need to rebuild those. That's where it gets a bit complex, right? So if you have if you're in MailChimp and you're I'm not really feeling MailChimp, I want to move over to Klaviyo, but I've got 8 journeys set up with each journey having 8 different emails in there. You're then looking at about 46 different emails that have to be rebuilt in Klaviyo. And that's why migrating can actually be a bit difficult. And it can take a little bit of time, but it's just front loading the work really, right? It's get a bunch out now, just hate life for a week. And then life will get a lot easier for 2 weeks after, right?
Yeah, I think there's a learning curve with anything new, that any new
100%.
digital tool that we pull in. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So the key elements of an email marketing strategy, I want to go into this a little bit more because we talked a little bit about it before. So obviously we have campaigns, sign up forms, and automations. I'm going to start with sign up forms. And I'm going to start because this is essentially where people start their journey with your business. Now, Georgia, how am I doing for time as well? I just want to make sure that we're all good.
We've still got 35 minutes.
Too easy. Okay. So sign up forms, they are the pop-ups that jump up onto a website. They build your list. They're annoying, but they form the backbone of your email marketing strategy. And honestly, if you're an e-commerce brand, you need to use these. People are quite conditioned now to a pop-up. And if you really want to be less intrusive with people's user journey, you can actually set the behavior of these forms in a lot of the email marketing platforms that are out there. For example, Klaviyo. So this one here, right? This one pops up on a website, right? It pops up right in front of you, but you can make it so that it slides out from the bottom right-hand corner. You can make it so that it loads after 30 seconds or 50% of the page scroll. There's a bunch of things out there, but they also help you incentivize purchases and they help you gain information about your audience. Now, this is what I was talking to a little bit about first-party data, because a lot of platforms, they're not really sharing a lot of information about each other anymore. And so something like this, you could say, this is a cereal brand, and you could say something just down here. This guy wanted to keep it very simple, and I'll tell you why in a second, but you could say like, hey, what's your favorite type of cereal? And you can gain that first party piece of information from your readers and then implement that into your campaign strategy. And that's a piece of information that you can't get from anywhere else, and you own it, right? Now, important caveat to this is the reason we haven't added that first party or that serial preference just here is because the more perceived workload a user or reader sees from a sign-up form, the lower the conversion rates go. So I don't know if anyone else has been on a website, but if you see a website where they have like, boom, sign-up form, give us your first name, email address, phone number. How did you hear about us? I'm like, oh my God, I hate it, right? And so you need to keep in mind that when they initially see all those forms, you're probably going to have a bit of a drop off, but you're going to make up for it in quality of data, but you have to weigh that up. A better way to go about it is actually to go first name, email address, enter, and then have a second step come up, because then they've already bought in and you haven't faced any of that attrition from this first stage. You've got their first name and their email address. And then the second step comes in like, oh, I've already given them this. It's a bit easier. Oh yeah, okay, address, done. And then it goes to a next step. That's what you'll see a lot of these bigger brands do. They'll have like, take your skincare quiz or that kind of stuff. Those quizzes are actually efforts, and they'll be like, hey, get your results emailed to you. That's a sign-up form. And they've just captured a bunch of first-party data. That's a very creative and, from a reader's perspective, low perceived effort required to actually give them all that information, because we staggered it out and chopped it all up.
And I think sometimes for us, like quizzes are fun. Like there are so 100%. Many people that have my information from quizzes. Mm-hmm. Just saying personally. Yeah.
100%. And like another one of those cool ones is those, they call them like the flywheels. Have you seen those? Like pop out in the left-hand corner. And it's like, select for, spin the wheel for a chance at a gift or a coupon or something like that.
Right.
Personally, I'm not a huge fan of those because I just feel like, I feel like it cheapens a brand a little bit, and it associates it a little bit with gambling. But on top of that, I haven't seen like a huge spike in or difference between conversion rates, which is how many people see the form versus how many people submit to the form. Relatively speaking. So sign-up forms, pop-ups. Key elements to consider. You want to create a mobile and a desktop version of each form. So you want to make sure that there's a desktop and a mobile version because people interact with those devices differently. You want to split test the behavior and design of each form. A big aspect of email marketing is really testing as many variables as you possibly can, right? So testing as much as you possibly can, whether it be a subject line, whether it be, for example, with this brand here, we're actually running a test where we've just removed all the product images. What happens if we remove the product images? Does that increase conversions? And those small things, you would be blown away by the impact that they actually have on conversion rates. It's really interesting. We did one where we had a dog brand that was selling dog collars, and we had exact same offer, exact same copy, different pictures of dogs. So one dog has this image, and we doubled the conversion rate with a different picture of a dog, which is wild. You'd
That
never
is
think that.
crazy. Yeah. And it's great that all of these platforms have these analytics that you can also get, like, that's what they're built for, right? So that we
Absolutely.
know.
Absolutely. And it's so easy to, like, just select the winners, and it's very straightforward. Now, yeah, once again, split test and capture the first name and capture the cell phone number if you can. Now, capturing the cell phone number, you'll see I haven't done it here. It's because we do it on the next step, because that's that perceived effort thing that I was talking about. SMS marketing is going to become a big thing in New Zealand. Not yet, because it's very expensive, but SMS marketing will eventually. And here's the thing, it's better to capture people's SMS consent now rather than in 2 years' time when things get cheaper and you're like, okay, now it's time to do SMS marketing. And you're like, oh, I've spent 2 years not capturing the list. I wish I spent that whole time at least backfilling a database. And yeah, so it's the same with email, right? Even if you don't have any plans to send any emails for the next year, next 2 years, still capture their consent, because your list is so valuable. It really is. If you have a vision to sell an e-commerce store or a business, that database tangibly impacts the value of your business. It really does. Like I used to buy and sell websites. If I saw a website that had a database of people, the price would increase significantly, because you own that database. Those are people that you're communicating directly, and you can get them onto your website without having to pay for like Google ads, Facebook ads, Instagram ads, or anything like that. Really recommend capturing email addresses as well as cell phone numbers. Easy. Automations. So I just want to speak a little bit more about automations. This is an example of a man called Peter. Peter wants to buy protein. He goes to a website. He signs up for 10% off. Cool. So now we have his email address, right? He adds item to his cart. So he goes to the store, finds some protein, adds the item to his cart, but he doesn't finish checkout. So he doesn't finish the order process, right? So what does the automation look like here? In Klaviyo or in any ESP that you use, MailChimp, that triggers an action, right? So that triggers an action or an automation. Now, what I would do as an email marketing expert is I would test 2 different emails, and I'd send an email saying, hey, Peter, we noticed you haven't finished your order for protein. Are you still interested? Okay, cool. Peter doesn't respond. He doesn't place an order. I'm going to go ahead and look what type of protein Peter's purchased in the past. And then I'm going to send him 1 of 3 emails based on what he's purchased in the past. I'm going to recommend either similar proteins, different proteins, or any kind of upsell or cross-sell that I want to do. So if Peter's purchased a milkshake protein in the past, right, I can give him a milkshake protein only discount code. And this is where this is personalization. Even though it doesn't feel like personalization, is personalized emails according to the user's information. And this is like a classic example of an automation. Now, this is a very basic one. They can get this big, right? This is one where these are emails. This is an email. These are conditional splits, splitting people off according to what they've done in the past, what they're doing in the future, what we can anticipate about them. And you can get really granular, and you can cut it up a million different ways. And like I said before, with a lot bigger brands, you'll find that they'll have automations that are massive, and they'll have hundreds of these things just running in the background, because a generic email versus a personalized email might increase conversion rates by 1%. But if you're an e-commerce store doing, well, first of all, if you're a small e-commerce store and it increases sales by 1% over a long enough timeline horizon, that's going to have a direct impact on sales to scale, right? It's kind of like KiwiSaver, right? We don't feel it now, we put it in, but when it's time for us to retire, it adds up. It's the exact same thing here. And so it's just getting those little granular details. And once again, guys, if you have any questions in the chat, chuck them in. Happy to reiterate any points that I go over here. The 5 key automations every e-commerce business should need. And at the end of this, we'll have some time for Q&A. So anybody in the B2B space, if you want to know what automations I'd recommend, check them in the chat and I'll get to those. Welcome series is number one. Abandoned cart, which is that flow that I just showed you, someone adding an item to their cart but not placing an order. Browse abandon, which is someone looking at a product and not adding the item to their cart. Fulfilled order is essentially a shipping notification saying, hey, your order has been shipped. And post-purchase thank you is an automation triggered off of someone placing an order and you thanking them for that order. Now, you can set these up, and the way that you set these up in Klaviyo is you just need to make sure that they're not overlapping too much, because the last thing you want is somebody getting like 7 emails at once, right? And there's filters. Unfortunately, within Klaviyo, they pre-build it all for you. So you can, I want to be clear, I don't work for Klaviyo, by the way. I feel like I'm a bit of a Klaviyo shill, but I'm not. I just love it. And there are pre-built flows and automations that will filter people out according to all this. So these are the 5 that you need if you're just starting out. There's a bunch more that you can build, but these are going to generate the most sales and the best connection with your readers the quickest. It's these 5 right here. Easy. So campaigns. Woo. Now, core components of an email campaign. These are newsletters, those one-off emails. They are emails similar to automations, but they are not triggered off of people's actions. They are triggered off of what you want to say or promote to your audience. They can be informational or they can be promotional. Now, I said minimum 4 a week. I meant to say minimum 4 a month, I recommend. That's what I set for my standard with the clients that I work with. But you guys, it's really what capacity you have and like what return on investment you guys are seeing from your email marketing strategy. But I like to send 4 campaigns a month, and they should be sent to a segmented database, not your entire database. Also, oh yeah, sorry, go ahead, Georgia.
So would you, so then in that case, would you send 4 emails a month to each segment?
Great question. I like to send 4 emails a month just in general.
Okay.
You can chop it up to different segments. It's just about maintaining a cadence, keeping yourself in the rhythm of things. And then also, I think someone should receive an email from you, man, at least twice a month, just to keep yourself informed. Now, I know some people probably have this fear of, I don't want to bombard my readers. I hear that a lot. I don't want to spam my readers, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I've got a client who we did this test, and this is across the board, it's the case. The more emails you send, the more engaged your readers become. It's just the reality of it. We send emails for this one client 3 times a week. And I want to make an important caveat here. We're not selling to these people 3 times a week. We are educating and giving information and providing value 50% of the time. And the other 50% of the time, we are recommending products or having promotions. Because you're right, if you were getting sold to, I mean, how many of us, like, Briscoe's sales are just like standard pricing at this point, right? Like we're so like banner blind to that kind of stuff, that yeah, you need to really stagger these things out a little bit better. But that's neither here nor there. You want to be segmenting your database. The more emails you send, the lower the unsubscribe rates get, the lower the spam complaint rates get, because they're familiar with you. They're familiar with your brand. And I personally have never found a brand that I liked and said, you know what, I'm not going to be a customer of them anymore because they email me too much. It's just not the case. At the end of the day, you can just unsubscribe. It's not the end of the world. And don't be too worried about unsubscribe rates. Unsubscribes are a natural process of just people being like, you know what, this is no longer relevant to me. I don't want to be, it's not the end of the world. People get concerned about that, especially when they start ramping up their campaign strategy. So if you're a business who's like, you know what, I've never sent an email before. I'm just going to get started. You're going to see a high unsubscribe rate, but that's to be expected, and that's okay. You will find that unsubscribe rate will just dip down as you start sending more emails.
And it's not personal.
It's not personal, not at all. It's once again, it's a natural process of the business. And you know what? Like, if someone unsubscribed and that was the reason they didn't buy from you, I would be very surprised, and B, that's just not somebody you want to be communicating with anyway. And I think what I've also noticed a lot is that people can get quite scared. We're human beings, right? We're conditioned to see something negative and make it bigger than something that is positive. And we'll see 10, 20 people unsubscribed from one email, while at the same time that email doing $2,000 in sales, and then be like, oh my God, our unsubscribe rate's so high. It's like, well, no, we have to take this with a grain of salt. You should put emphasis on the people who clearly like your content, right? Like people are clearly engaging. Let's prioritize those people and let's segment them, right? And talk to just those people then, right? And obviously if they unsubscribe, they're going to get suppressed anyway. Suppressed meaning they can't be emailed to. But yeah, let's focus on the wins, right? It's like having 10 friends in the room saying, hey, we really like you, and that one guy who's an asshole who says he doesn't like you, and then our night's ruined, right? It happens to me all the time.
Linda has a really good question to that point. She
Sure.
asks, what is the key to getting people to open an email? I don't open most of the emails sent to me.
Totally. Great question. So number one is split testing. Test different subject lines. Number two is personalization. Having someone's first name in those emails can really help. Now you can do that with tags. There's like little custom tags that you can have within each ESP, email service provider. Klaviyo will have a first name tag. MailChimp will have a first name tag. And also you want to use words like you, that speak like you should open this email, or being very direct. One thing that I've found worked really well, and this is kind of unconventional, but is having an emoji. I know this sounds kind of tacky, but an emoji for your brand that you include consistently in the subject line, so people know that it's you. It's the same emoji consistently. So if anyone subscribes to my newsletter, you'll notice that there's it's an email emoji at the very start, and that allows people to quickly identify, oh, okay, they've gotten used to Gavin's emails, they know that it's from me, and it separates you from everybody else out there. And also feel free to get kind of weird with the subject lines. I have had really good tests and samples with using subject lines instead of, hey, open the email for your coupon, to switching it really unconventionally and just saying RE -- your coupon. And these kind of weird subject lines get much higher open rates because they're differentiated and people aren't seeing them in there. Also, you will see your open rates increase if you segment your database a bit more. So segmenting your database as a proportion will increase your open rates, but it's also going to affect deliverability, which is where your emails are landing in people's inboxes. Think if you have Google or Gmail, you have that promotions folder, social, updates, primary. If you have a good deliverability score, meaning you are segmenting your database and sending to an engaged database, those emails are gradually going to move from the promotions folder into that primary folder, which will increase the click rates, open rates, conversions, sales, revenue.
Well, and to that point, Joe has a question here, and Joe is saying, in our monthly e-newsletter via MailChimp, we usually have a product promo, special offer, health and safety info, machines for sale. What you're suggesting is that we break these down to separate campaigns?
I would say that, yeah.
Okay.
I think I like the idea, the reality. There was a study done recently that showed that people's attention spans are just getting wrecked, right? Like we just can't really focus on more than one thing. Have a primary focus for each email, have like one call to action for each email, and then split them out, make it short and sweet, and then break those into different categories, just because parts of that content will probably get lost in the overall length of the email if it's just one. But if you break it down and make it seem like it's more digestible, it speaks a little bit to that sign-up form thing that I was talking about earlier. People want it to be perceived as low effort, right? Especially if you're getting an email during work hours. More often than not, they're like, I'm working, I don't want to read like a novel. But if you break it up into smaller parts, it'll be a bit easier to digest.
Great, thank you.
Too easy. I hope that all makes sense. Now, for those of you who are falling short on campaign ideas, ChatGPT. I'm telling you. Now, don't get it to write the email for you. It can, but it just sounds frou-frou-y. It doesn't make any sense. It makes sense, but it's just it sounds like an AI wrote it. But ChatGPT is great for coming up with content ideas, especially if you want to do those informational focused emails, right? So for example, we have one of my clients who sells a drink that is health focused, and in ChatGPT, I'll just go, hey, give me 5 email campaign topics on the health benefits of ingredient XYZ in this drink. And then it'll spit out 5 campaign ideas. And keep in mind, like, these campaigns don't need to be like massive things. I like to keep these campaigns under 200 words. Nice, short, sweet, and punchy, give value. You're just reaffirming presence more often than not with these things. ChatGPT is great. I've got the 4 subscription, but 3.5 will absolutely do the trick as well, which is free for anybody who isn't familiar with ChatGPT. Easy peasy. Consent, best practices. So
I think this is a big one. This is a big one. Yeah.
So first of all, make sure those you email have consented to receive emails from you. What does that actually mean? And here's the thing, it's murky, right? And I will give is there a way we can give a link to everybody after this?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Georgia, I'll give you this link, and it kind of breaks down every single aspect of it. But there's best practice, and then there's what's allowed. I prefer best practice because that's going to put you above what is allowed. If somebody explicitly says, I want to receive emails from you, you can email them with promotional and sales related material. Now, if somebody hasn't opted in for that and they place an order for something, you are still allowed to send them emails that are related to their order, i.e., here is your invoice, your item has shipped, your item is being delivered. Those kinds of things, those are what we call transactional emails. So you are allowed to send transactional emails, but you cannot sell to them. If you want to sell to those people, in the sign-up forms that I was talking about, you have to make sure they consent. So when they enter their email address, they are consenting. Boom. If you have a e-commerce store and there's like a checkout box at the end, a lot of businesses, and this is the thing, it is the Wild West out there. I mean, it really is. No one's really there. People are regulating it, but they're going after these massive companies who they can actually get something out of if they prosecute. But you'll find a lot of e-commerce stores will have a box at the end that says opt me in for email marketing, that kind of thing. And it'll be automatically ticked, and you have to untick it to not opt in. And it's one of those murky areas because you need to have intentional consent. It can't be accidental consent for email marketing. So there's an issue. Now, you can get verbal consent for someone to add you to their mailing list, right? So in a B2B space, Georgia, if you're like, Gavin, add me to your mailing list, that counts, right? But if it ever goes to mediation or something like that, you need to have evidence of that verbal consent. Now, here's the thing. In small business world, that's probably never going to happen. But if you want to operate above board, you do need to have that little bit of verbal, like, yes, I consent to have that. Okay, cool. To be honest, I've never done it that way. I guess like speak into the recording. But as well, if somebody gives you their business card, and this is where it's that best practice, you are legally allowed to add them to your mailing list, but it's not best practice because they're probably just going to be like, why am I on this person's list, right?
Is there a function where if someone says, yeah, add me to your mailing list, and you pop their name in, and then they get an email that says, click this to consent?
Great question. So that is single opt-in versus double opt-in.
Okay.
So single opt-in is just, I consent, boom, you're in the list. Double opt-in, I'm sure some of you guys have gotten that, where you get an email with a button saying, confirm your entry into our mailing list. That is double opt-in. And what that's going to do is it's going to ensure that you have a much higher quality list. You're going to be above board from a consent perspective, but you're going to have lower subscriber numbers. So you kind of have to weigh up between, do I want to have a smaller, higher quality list that may get better engagement, but lower total volume of sales? versus a single opt-in list, which will get lower engagement, but probably higher volume of sales, not as a percentage, but volume of sales. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, that does. There's just a comment here in the chat, that in the Q&A, that says, Tim says, I use a website called ShareThrough that analyzes subject headlines using words like you, your, etc. make quite a difference in the ratings, which is what you were saying, Gavin. And so it looks like this is headlines.sharethrough.com. I'll pop that in the chat if anyone wants to have a look at that. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, awesome. If you guys have any, like, there's so many softwares out there, so please, like, chuck those in. Like, I'm always like, I'm finding new stuff all the time. Yeah, but like, being like talking directly, like, instead of like, you guys have been great, you have been great, like that really kind of gets me going, easy. So that's consent. I hope that now, once again, I'll give a link to it, and it's the Department of Internal Affairs have a whole list of things that you can really get. For me to go through that list, we just wouldn't have enough time. But I'll pass that over to you guys afterwards. I'll give that to you, Georgia, to shoot out, and that'll give you guys a lot more information on all that stuff. Now, do we have another question just pop through, or
no, that was from Tim. Yep.
Easy. Cool.
Yep.
Awesome. So how to grow your list. This is probably my second to last slide. Growing your list, sign up forms is a great way. Giveaways. Caveat with giveaways, the quality of list isn't going to be as good because people are obviously entering it for free, but they are cheap because you're just giving away free product or something, right? Without having to pay for ads on that. Obviously, you can put ads behind it. A great strategy that I've used quite a bit for my businesses, or my clients' businesses, is we find businesses that are similar to theirs, not identical, and we run cross-promotional giveaways, directing them to a dedicated landing page, and then we just build our lists together. And then you have a similar audience, you're good to go from there. Consent at checkout, which is what I was talking about before. So tick this box to get consent to subscribe to our email marketing. Events. I kind of hate these, to be honest, because trade shows are a classic example of this. You go to a trade show and they will sell you at the end of the trade show. If you're a stall or a service provider there, they'll be like, hey, here's the list. You can, buy it for $500, or sometimes they'll give it to you for free. The thing is, everyone's buying that list. And the moment the trade show ends, everyone's bombarding those people with emails. And we did a campaign with one of my clients who recently bought that list from a trade show, and we were having 12% unsubscribe rates, which is terrible. Like, that's going to get you your email account kind of locked down, to be honest, with that rate.
Oh,
and
wow.
It's because like people have entered a giveaway. They may not even remembered your business. They might not even come and saw your stall. So just be mindful about that when it comes to the event side of things. If you do want to capture email consents from events, I recommend actually having a QR code on your own desk and then allowing people to scan your own QR code that takes you to your website where they can then subscribe to email marketing. That's a better way, because then you're actually getting people who are consenting to your business, not just every business, and you're going to have lower unsubscribe rates, and you can email them immediately after they subscribe, not 2 weeks after the event ends when XPO Exhibitions gives you the list, if that makes sense. Paid ads, I mean, we all know what those are. Jump onto our website. Here's 10% off, subscribe. Linking all socials to a dedicated email landing page. What I notice a lot of businesses do is they put a lot of emphasis on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and they have a social media strategy, but they just don't have a corresponding email marketing strategy. In each one of your bios, I actually recommend having a link to a dedicated landing page where people can go, click that link, enter into your email marketing, and having that as a presence on pretty much every social media platform, because the return that you're going to get from sending an email out versus the return that you're going to get from putting a post out, they're not even comparable. Like, it's night and day. Email is so much more direct. Personally, I'm a bigger fan of putting more emphasis on, obviously I say this, but putting more emphasis on email marketing as opposed to social media. But I recommend trying to drive all existing social channels into your email marketing channels. And that is it. Any questions?
That is amazing. That was a lot of information.
Yeah, sorry guys.
No, don't apologize. That was amazing, Gavin. Thank you so much. And I love how detailed, I mean, the more and more we're learning about marketing here at Digital Boost, and the more we have experts who are coming on, this was email marketing, any kind of social media marketing, we're learning that we need to be getting specific. And that's where this segmenting is coming into play for me. Is like my takeaway from this is like really getting specific and really learning how to do this. And I want to let all of you know that Gavin is actually going to come back. I think we have you booked the 19th of October. Put it in your calendars. Gavin's coming back to do a workshop with us where we're really going to break this down for your business. We are going to get into Klaviyo, create an account, a Klaviyo account, and create this marketing strategy for you and for your business. So come along, come on into that workshop. We get into the nitty gritty with those. And Gavin, your expertise is phenomenal. This is really, really great. I mean, I'm going to be learning a lot from that workshop for sure.
I'm excited. Yeah. I'm only 19.
You're only 19. How did that happen? And I'm 300. Nobody,
no,
there's a filter on this.
It's a good filter then.
Yeah, it's fantastic. But I'm good. People want to get a hold of you.
Yes.
What's the best way to get a hold of you?
Totally. So I'm on LinkedIn. I put a bunch of stuff on LinkedIn. So Gavin Hewitson on LinkedIn. I should pop up. I pray I pop up. Or on my website, which is in-box.co.nz. Yeah, I'm available on either.
And we have another question. Thank you for this. Has been a great overview with some great specifics. I dislike this method and MailChimp, but you are inspiring. Yeah. I dislike this method as well, because I think part of it is that what we talked about in the beginning is it does feel really intimate. It feels like we are intimately getting into people's inboxes and we are intimately connecting with them in this way where the rejection even feels massive, right? Like where I said, please don't take it personally. Any unsubscribe you get feels like a personal attack. You're like, what did I do to you? Why are you unsubscribing?
I totally hear you. And so I can speak to that as well, right? Because it does feel somewhat invasive, right? We are, I mean, if I were to put my mom's like a huge hippie, and if I were to put my mom's hippie hat on, I would say we are, taking advantage of information that people have given us to sell our products to. But I would say back to that is if your product is genuinely good and if it's genuinely helping somebody, I think it's a different conversation, right? Like if you are selling something that is not good for somebody and you're implementing these strategies, same with B2B. If you're selling a service that is not going to deliver, it's a different conversation. And if I were then to put my crazy capitalist hat on, I would say, surely it is your duty to sell a better product than the competition out there and beat them out when it comes to through the use of some of these strategies. But once again, here's the other thing too. If you feel gross about selling too heavily, or if you feel gross about leveraging a lot of this information, there is nothing wrong then with pivoting and just purely focusing on education, right? And you can educate your audience as much as you want, and you're giving value and you're not having an ask. And to be honest, that's what I do with my own newsletter. If you go onto my website, you can subscribe to that. You'll notice in every email that I send out, I never sell. I just give value, give value, give value. And that's personally in my head, my thinking of, if you just give enough value, the world will kind of give back to you as well. And so that's another strategy that you can fully implement if that feeling of sales is a bit uncomfortable.
So I have a question here from Linda. Thanks, Gavin. That was so informative and helpful. I'll be joining the next workshop for sure. Yay. I'll see you there.
Awesome.
Would you be able to comment on ROAS standard for New Zealand for Facebook and Google?
Unfortunately, I cannot. I wish I could. I can tell you it would vary from product or space that you're in. So I really don't know, but I can make an interesting comment on that. So unfortunately, I just do email and SMS marketing, but I can make an interesting comment on this. So ROAS is return on ad spend, right? So how much return you get from what you get back from a dollar in perspective and a dollar out perspective from ads. With email marketing, you can actually, if your long-term return from email is greater than the initial ROAS that you get from ad spend, you can actually, in some cases, if you have the budget to, run at a negative ROAS and recover it on the back end with an email, like a good email marketing strategy. So for example, if you have a ROAS of 1, right? So you spend $1 in advertising and you get $1 back in sales. That's not good, because you're going to be running at a loss because you have to consider your own margins. But if you capture that person's email and you have a high, repeat customer rate, average order value goes up as time goes on, which you can do through email because you can upsell, cross-sell, add additional services, all that good stuff. You can actually take a hit on that ad spend initially, and then once again, recover it with a good email marketing strategy. But unfortunately, I don't know exactly what a good ROAS would be for your industry, your business. I'm just an email guy,
Yeah, Linda, maybe check out, ask our support team here. You can support at digitalboost.co.nz, and they might have an answer for you. They might have a more in-depth answer, but that's actually, I love your answer, Gavin, on how it relates to email marketing is great. Joe, this was great. Thank you. I'll be replanning our e-news marketing for the new year and looking at MailChimp alternatives.
Yes.
Bless.
Absolutely. There's a bunch of really good alternatives out there. And yeah, I think big thing would be figuring out what is it that MailChimp offers? If it's like an easy integration, I mean, then there's an argument there, but there's just so many other things out there that I recommend.
Yeah, well, thank you everybody for coming and attending and joining us here for these Q&As every week. And for those of you watching the recording, any questions you might have, you can reach out to Gavin at LinkedIn or at inbox in -box.co.nz, or come to us here, support@digitalboost.co.nz, and we're always happy to help. So thanks again, Gavin. Thank you for your expertise and thank you for your time. We really appreciate it. And we'll see you on the 19th of October for our workshop. So get in there, everybody, and sign up for that. I think it's going to be a really good one.
Perfect.
So
Awesome.
See you all soon. Matewa.